Shalom, my friends. Today, we are going to answer one of the most painful questions a human being can ask. Why does God not answer my prayers for more? You pray for more money, but your bank account stays the same. You pray for more love, but you remain alone. You pray for more success, but you stay stuck in the same place. It feels like you are screaming into a void. It feels like heaven is made of brass. But what if I told you that God is not ignoring you? What if I told you that the problem is not with the supply, but with your capacity to receive? Today, I am going to reveal the spiritual law that governs all blessings, and it is this. You do not receive what you want. You receive what you can carry. And I am going to show you how to expand your capacity so that you can carry the infinite abundance that God is desperately trying to give you. But first, I need you to make a powerful declaration. I want you to go to the comments right now and write, I am expanding my vessel. This is not just a phrase. This is a spiritual command. This is you telling the universe that you are ready for more, that you are no longer content with a thimbleful of blessing when there is an entire ocean available to you. Write, I am expanding my vessel now. Now, listen. Our mission here is to build an army of 50,000 souls who are not just asking for more, but are building the capacity to handle more. If you are ready to be a part of this army of spiritual giants, subscribe to this channel now. It is your commitment to a life of expansion, not a life of limitation. And if you are serious about transforming your financial reality, I have something special for you. For a limited time, I am opening the doors to the Torah Millionaire Business School for just $299. This is closing soon. In this course, I unveil the full Torah wealth system, the same 3,000-year-old Jewish money laws that built dynasties, protected families, and created unstoppable prosperity. The link is in the comments. All right, let's get to the heart of the matter. The common enemy we are all fighting is what I call small vessel syndrome. It is the unconscious belief that you are small, that you are weak, that you are incapable of handling great blessings. You are standing on the shore of an infinite ocean of abundance, holding a tiny teacup, and you are wondering why you are thirsty. The problem is not the ocean. The problem is the teacup. The hidden mechanism here is that God will never give you a blessing that will destroy you. If you pray for $1 million, but you only have the spiritual and emotional capacity to handle $10,000, giving you $1 million would be an act of cruelty, not kindness. It would crush you. The anxiety would overwhelm you. The responsibility would break you. You would self-sabotage and lose it all, and you would end up in a worse place than where you started. So, out of love, God withholds the blessing until you have built the vessel to contain it. The cost of this small vessel syndrome is a life of mediocrity. It is a life of just enough money to pay the bills, just enough love to not feel completely alone, just enough success to not feel like a total failure. It is a life lived in the shallow end of the pool, when God is calling you into the deep. It is the tragedy of a life half-lived, of potential unrealized, of blessings unclaimed. I know this because I was the king of small vessel syndrome. I was a multimillionaire, but I had the vessel of a pauper. I was constantly stressed about money. I was terrified of losing what I had. I would pray, "God, give me more. Give me $1 billion." But my prayers felt empty, and nothing changed. I was stuck on a plateau, and I could not figure out why. I was doing all the right things. I was working hard. I was investing wisely. I was giving charity. But the gates of abundance felt sealed shut, and I was filled with a quiet rage, a spiritual frustration that was eating me alive. Now, let me show you the Torah's path to shattering your small vessel and building a vessel worthy of the blessings you seek. The most powerful teaching on this subject comes from the second book of Kings, in the story of the prophet Elisha and the widow's oil. A widow comes to Elisha, crying that her husband has died, and a creditor is coming to take her 2 sons as slaves. She is destitute. She has nothing. Elisha asks her, "What do you have in the house?" She replies, "Your maidservant has nothing in the house except a small pot of oil." This is the first lesson. You always have something. You always have a small pot of oil. It might be a talent. It might be an idea. It might be a relationship. It is the seed of your miracle, but you have to recognize it. Elisha then tells her to do something strange. He says, "Go, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels. Do not gather just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons. Then pour it into all those vessels and set aside the full ones." This is the second lesson, and it is the key to everything. The miracle is not in the oil. The miracle is in the vessels. Her job was not to create the oil. Her job was to create the capacity to receive the oil. And notice the instruction, "Do not gather just a few." In other words, your only limitation is the size of your vessel. The supply is infinite. The question is, how much can you carry? So, the widow does as she is told. She and her sons gather all the empty vessels they can find. They shut the door, and she begins to pour from her one small pot of oil. And the oil keeps flowing. It fills one vessel, then another, then another. It is a torrent of divine abundance. And the oil only stops flowing when her son says to her, "There is not another vessel." The moment her capacity ran out, the miracle stopped. Not because God's supply ran out, but because her vessel was full. Now let me give you the third lesson from this story, and it is the most profound. Notice that the widow had to shut the door. The miracle happened in private, not in public. Why? Because the expansion of your vessel is an intimate process between you and God. It is not a performance for others. It is not about impressing your neighbors. It is about becoming who you are meant to be, in secret, in the quiet, in the sacred space between you and the divine. And when you do the work in private, God will reward you in public. The widow sold the oil, paid her debts, and lived on the rest. The private miracle became public provision. And here is the fourth lesson. The widow's sons were part of the miracle. They helped her gather the vessels. They helped her pour the oil. This teaches us that vessel expansion is not a solo journey. You need community. You need partners. You need people who believe in you, who support you, who stretch you. The lone wolf dies. The pack survives. And the pack thrives. My personal breakthrough came when I finally understood this story. I was the widow. I had a small pot of oil, my knowledge of business, my work ethic. But I was only gathering a few vessels. I was playing small. I was thinking small. I was acting small. And so, I was receiving small. And I made a decision that changed my life forever. I decided to stop praying for more oil and to start gathering more vessels. Let me tell you exactly what happened. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was in my office, staring at my bank account. I had just made my first $1 million. I should have been celebrating, but I felt nothing. I felt empty, and I realized why. I had been praying for $1 million for years, and when I finally got it, I realized that I was not ready for it. I did not have the vessel to contain it. The money came in, and it went right back out. I spent it on things I did not need, trying to fill the emptiness inside. I invested it in deals I did not understand, trying to prove that I was worthy of it. I gave it away to people who did not deserve it, trying to buy their approval. Within 6 months, half of it was gone, and I was more miserable than I had ever been. Because I had the blessing, but I did not have the vessel. I was a millionaire with a pauper's soul. And that is when I heard the voice. It was not an audible voice. It was a whisper in my spirit, and it said, "You are not ready for $1 billion. You are barely ready for $1 million. Stop asking for more and start becoming more." And in that moment, I understood the widow's oil. The oil was always there. The supply was always infinite. But the miracle was limited by the number of vessels. And I had been living my entire life with one tiny vessel, wondering why I was not experiencing the abundance that I knew was available to me. What does that mean practically? It meant I stopped focusing on what I wanted to get, and I started focusing on what I could handle. Started to intentionally expand my capacity in every area of my life. Instead of managing a team of 10, I built a company that could manage a team of 1,000. Instead of taking on small, safe investments, I started to take on bigger, bolder risks that stretched my faith and my abilities. Instead of giving a small, comfortable amount to charity, I started to give amounts that scared me, that forced me to trust in the divine flow. I started to gather more vessels. I was stretching my spiritual, emotional, and financial muscles. I was building the capacity to carry more. And the moment I started to build a bigger vessel, the universe started to pour more into it. The billion-dollar deals started to appear. The world-class talent started to show up. The opportunities that I had been praying for were suddenly everywhere, because I had finally built a vessel big enough to contain them. Now, let me give you the practical application. I call it the Vessel Expansion Protocol. It is a three-step process for building the capacity to receive the infinite abundance that is your birthright. Step number 1. Measure your vessel. You cannot expand what you do not measure. You need to do an honest audit of your current capacity. How much responsibility can you handle? How much stress can you handle? How much success can you handle? Be brutally honest with yourself. Where are the leaks in your vessel? Where are the cracks? Is it a lack of knowledge? A lack of discipline? A lack of faith? A lack of a team? You must know the size and condition of your current vessel before you can begin to expand it. Step number 2. Stretch your vessel. This is where the growth happens. You must intentionally take on more than you think you can handle. This is the principle of progressive overload in weightlifting, applied to your soul. If you want to lift a heavier weight, you must first struggle with a weight that is just beyond your current capacity. It is the same with life. You must volunteer for the project that scares you. You must make the investment that makes your hands sweat. You must hire the employee that forces you to become a better leader. You must stretch your vessel beyond its current limits. It will be uncomfortable. It will be scary. But it is the only way to grow. Step number 3. Reinforce your vessel. As you stretch your vessel, you must also reinforce it. You cannot just keep adding more and more pressure without strengthening the container. This is where spiritual practice comes in. You reinforce your vessel with prayer, with meditation, with Torah study, with acts of kindness, with gratitude. These practices are the spiritual rebar that allows your vessel to hold more and more blessing without cracking under the pressure. The bigger the vessel you want to build, the stronger your spiritual foundation must be. Let me give you 3 real-life examples of people who used this protocol to change their lives. Story number 1. Sarah. Sarah was a freelance graphic designer, making about $50,000 a year. She wanted to make more, but she was terrified of hiring help. She had a small vessel. I taught her the Vessel Expansion Protocol. She measured her vessel and realized her bottleneck was her own time. She stretched her vessel by hiring her first virtual assistant, even though it scared her to death. And she reinforced her vessel by starting a daily gratitude practice to handle the anxiety. Within 1 year, she had a team of 5 designers and was earning over $500,000 a year. She expanded her vessel, and the universe filled it. Story number 2. David. David was a real estate investor who only bought single-family homes. He was comfortable. He was safe. He had a small vessel. I taught him the Vessel Expansion Protocol. He measured his vessel and realized his bottleneck was his fear of large numbers. He stretched his vessel by partnering with another investor to buy a 50-unit apartment building. The deal was complex and stressful. It pushed him to his limits. And he reinforced his vessel by studying the laws of emunah, faith, every morning. The deal was a massive success. He is now one of the biggest real estate investors in his city, owning thousands of units. He expanded his vessel, and the universe filled it. Story number 3. Rachel. Rachel was a baker who sold cakes out of her home. She dreamed of opening a storefront, but she was afraid of the overhead and the responsibility. She had a small vessel. I taught her the vessel expansion protocol. She measured her vessel and realized her bottleneck was her lack of business knowledge. She stretched her vessel by enrolling in a business course and writing a business plan. And she reinforced her vessel by joining a group of other female entrepreneurs for support. Last year, she opened her first bakery. It was so successful that she is now franchising it. She expanded her vessel, and the universe filled it. Now for the advanced application. The Level 2 hack is to understand that the fastest way to expand your vessel is to help other people expand theirs. When you teach, when you mentor, when you lead, when you empower others, you are forced to grow. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot fill a cup that is smaller than your own. So, by helping others build their capacity, you are, by definition, building your own. This is the secret of the greatest leaders, the greatest teachers, the greatest rabbis. They became great by making others great. Let me give you the Kabbalistic understanding of this principle. In Kabbalah, we have the concept of kli, vessel, and or, light. The or is the divine light, the infinite abundance of God. The kli is your soul, your capacity to receive that light. And here is the key. The kli is not passive. The kli is active. The kli is a co-creator with God. Your job is not to beg for more light. Your job is to build a bigger vessel. And the way you build a bigger vessel is through ratzon. Avodah, work, and mesirut nefesh, self-sacrifice. You must desire more. You must work for more. And you must be willing to sacrifice your comfort, your ego, your small self, in order to become the person who is capable of receiving more. And here is the neuroscience to back this up. When you stretch your vessel, when you take on challenges that are just beyond your current capacity, your brain releases a chemical called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is the miracle grow for your brain. It creates new neural pathways. It strengthens existing connections. It literally makes you smarter, more capable, more resilient. You are not just expanding your spiritual vessel, you are expanding your neurological vessel. You are becoming a different person, biologically and spiritually. Let me address the 3 most common objections. Objection number 1. Rabbi, I'm already overwhelmed. I can't handle any more. My response? You are overwhelmed because you have a small vessel that is overflowing. The solution is not to ask for less water. The solution is to build a bigger bucket. The practices of reinforcing your vessel, prayer, meditation, gratitude, do not take energy, they create energy. They expand your capacity to handle the challenges of life with grace and ease. Objection number 2. Rabbi, what if I stretch my vessel and it breaks? What if I fail? My response? Your vessel will not break. God will not test you beyond your ability. And failure is not the end of the story. Failure is part of the stretching process. Every time you fail, you learn, you grow, you come back stronger. The only true failure is the failure to try, the failure to stretch, the failure to grow. Objection number 3. Rabbi, this sounds like a lot of work. Isn't there an easier way? My response? There is no easier way. And you should be grateful for that. The joy of life is not in the receiving. It is in the becoming. It is in the process of expanding your vessel, of growing into the person who is capable of carrying great blessings. The work is the reward. The struggle is the gift. The journey is the destination.